that. Recording is in progress. All right. So we're going to talk today about about people who are ill on Shabbos, right? The Cholev Shabbat. Rav Nachum's here. So I wanted to start actually with just before we like open up the Shulchan Aruch, just the categories, right? There's different categories of being cholah, of and so what are the categories we have halachically? Um, just I'm going to open it up. Let's.
So, sheyesh bo sakana, she'ein bo sakana, nafal b'mita.
Yeah, good. I want to actually like the Yeshbo Sakana means Sakana where?
So there's sakanat b'chol gufo as opposed to sakanat aver.
Good, good. Okay. So this first category, Sakanat Kol Gufo, right? Like the person's gonna die, right? Because of this. Okay. And what's the general rule before we'll dive into this? But yeah, someone says, Yeshbo Sakana is what we call it.
All bets are off, but it's not clear whether it's permitted or docha.
Good, great. You got already jumped into the another category there, right? Is that all bets are off in terms of you clear that you are allowed to violate not just Shabbat, you're allowed to violate only most of the mitzvot to save this person, right? We have the three exceptions, right? You can't go worship Avodah Zarah to go save this person, obviously, right? Assuming that Avodah Zarah has a toilet, which I assume it doesn't, but okay, like um but yeah, bets are off. There's a question. Well, maybe I'll come back to the Hutra versus Dechuya in a second. Okay, so that's category one. Person is, chole in the way that there's sakana lechol gufo. Okay, what about you said sakanat ever? What's that mean?
You are in, I mean, I'm assuming it's you're in danger of losing an entire limb
Great. Now, what
or
counts as a
possibly your
limb?
eyes.
We could talk about what counts as a limb and so forth, right? But yeah, but those. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what kind of things you can or cannot do. What can we say definitively if you're in the risk of losing a limb you cannot violate on Shabbat?
Yehareg v'al yavor.
Well, okay, fair enough. So, but you cannot violate a deraita, right?
Right.
Okay. Hello, Ori. How are you? Nice bookshelf behind you. So,
I'm in Ramada, Rome. That's
that's
my camp.
indeed. So, okay. So there's Sakanat Aver. There's another category of sickness, I would call it. What would you say that is? There's at least two more that I can think of right now off the top of my head.
Where are we putting halal?
Ah,
Uh,
good. So halal is usually seen as what? If it's within a halal.
would that be kol gufa? I mean, if it's an internal wound.
Yeah, well, so shin kaf chet. Everyone open up to shin kaf chet. No, since you asked the question, see if I remember where it is. To um, yeah, Dalit. Everyone look at Sif Dalit in the Shulchan Aruch. Reuven, read it for us.
Okay.
I know usually I read the Shulchan Aruch. Today you're reading the Shulchan Aruch.
No, it's okay. Okay. מכה של חלל אינה צריכה עומד, שאפילו אין שם בקיאים וחולה אינו אומר כלום, עושים לו כל שרגילים לעשות לו בכל. Okay, so if you have an internal wound, you don't need to get an expert to come and look at it. And so even if there are no experts there and the sick person doesn't say anything about their wound, you do for that person the same thing you would do on a weekday. אבל כשיודעים ומכירים באותו חולי שממתין ואין צריך חילול, אסור לחלל עליו אף על פי שהיא מכה של חלל. Okay, right. But when you can know and recognize that this wound can wait, you don't need to tend to it immediately, and it doesn't require being Chilul Shabbos for its sake, then you are forbidden to be Chilul Shabbos for it, even though it's a halal, like it's a very serious internal injury.
Yeah, right. So I mean, teeth are an interesting thing, right? You could have a tooth thing that could be very dangerous, but you
Right.
can sometimes wait, right? There are other injuries, right? You can, it's eventually going to be dangerous, but the wait time may not make a difference, right? Actually, one of the ways I was thinking about this is like, I don't know, maybe Rav Nachum has a thought. I don't know if this got covered at all, but like chemotherapy, right? Might be a good one that has like, sometimes it's like, you can do it. It doesn't have to be a particular day. It just has to be done sometime soon, right? It's like you may not, and they're like, well, you can have an appointment on Shabbos, you can have an appointment on Sunday. Take the appointment on Sunday, right? Right. It's because it is clearly cancer, right? And chemotherapy is clearly, right, sakanat nefashot. But one day here or there may not make a difference as long as it's like depending. There might be some that you have to schedule like a particular day, but let's assume you don't, kind of thing. So, um, but also, right, another one that this actually came up during COVID. I don't know if people remember this, right? A question of vaccine availability. Remember the very beginning when the vaccines were not so available, right? The whole question, right? Giving a vaccine is probably a derabanan, right? It might be some deraitas you have to do to get there and all that kind of stuff. But like for the moment, let's assume just derabanan, right? So there's a question, right? Clearly, COVID was at least the way I know Rav Shachter, the way he was seeing it, a lot of other people, right? It was clearly a savek nefashot case where a lot of people were dying. And the question was, could you violate a derabbanan and go get if like your only time to get one was Shabbos, could you get it? But, of course, if you had the ability to schedule it on Sunday instead of Shabbos, you schedule it on Sunday, right? It's like, so, okay, good. Good. There's another major category of sickness that we do some things for. This is Yud Zayin. Everyone see Yud Zayin. If you remember, you can look back.
This is the Einbo Sakana?
Einbo Sakana, but I guess I should.
Nafal b'mita?
Yeah, Nafal Mishkav, right? This is the person who like can't stand up because they're sick.
Right.
And there we're going to talk about there's 4 different shitot, or according to the Bach, 3 different shitot. But as to what you can or cannot do, you cannot generally violate a deraita for this person. There are questions about how you would be allowed, or if and when you're allowed to violate a derabanan, right, for this person. Nafala mishkav. By the way, very classic category, I think, in this case. We talk about headaches, right? A small headache. Okay, you're walking around. We'll talk about that category in a second. But like there are like debilitating headaches, right, on Shabbos.
Migraines.
Exactly, migraines. My daughter gets migraines. I know a lot of people get migraines. You can't violate a deraita, but there might be in certain cases we'll see when and how you can violate a derabanan for such a person. Okay. There's also a category with that of like who meets the error, right? And is and becomes whole gufo in this case, which might be very similar to nofala mishkav, right? So there's one more category which is almost like obvious, so obvious that maybe nobody says anything. All right, let's go back to Shin Kafchet. That's where we're sticking today. If I remember, I think it's in the first seif.
Just like generally not feeling very well.
Yeah. What's the term that's used?
Yes.
Mechush me'alma.
Oh yeah, mechush me'alma. Like yeah, exactly. And keep reading that term. Vihu.
Mitchazek v'holech kabari.
Yeah. Right. All right, so you're a little bit of pain. You're not your best, but you're not, this isn't now for that person, this is really where Shin Kaf Zayin comes in, right? Is what you can do things that are not refuah that may be refuah, right? Like things that are like, like you can eat some food, right? But you can't do something that's particularly refuah. Now we can argue about what is the axis of refuah and what's the axis of ochel, or something that people just do regularly, like putting on like some, like we talked about, put some oil on your hands. Maybe that's what everyone does in our one place, and another place is not what everyone does, unless you're sick. But the mitchazek v'holech uvari is the category of you can do things that you would do that are not necessarily healing, but you can't do things that are healing for that. Yeah, cough drops are interesting, right? Like some people do take cough drops in some places, like all the time. I remember I have some memory, and maybe I don't know if this was covered in class or anything, but that there's like a Rav Moshe on questions about like aspirin, right? Because like some people take aspirin as a daily thing, right? It's kind of like a preventative, a vitamin, maybe that's permitted actually, and we're not worried, or that maybe it is a case of we're worried about grinding, shall we say? Okay. Okay, those are the categories I wanted to just go over those, and I think this is, it's a good point. Now, obviously, we have safek nefashot, right, Lehakel? It's not like, and you see someone, you're like, are you in the category of your whole, you may die? If we think that, as we said, you don't need an expert. There are interesting cases when experts say things, but we save that person. We don't start questioning ourselves, and we'll get into that a little bit. So, but actually, I do want to bring up just right one of the ideas, right? We're going to have this question of if somebody is sick on Shabbos, he's like really like gonna die sick, like sakana, right? As a real true sakana. Then the question is, right? Are you shochet? Right? We know that you're allowed to do shchita for them, but are you shochet or do you feed them nevela? Right? This is the question of if Shabbat is dechuya and not hutra, right? Do you feed them the nevela? And if you remember, I think it's no, it wasn't the Rashba. Someone will remind me who it was who says this is the Rosh. It's the Rosh. He says the reason, and I think the Beit Yosef doesn't like this. The reason that you don't feed the nevela is that they may like refuse to take the nevela and get more sick, right? It's kind of thing. But I don't remember why I was saying that. Oh yeah, so you also there's a big thing where people who are sick, you also don't want to do things that you want to like convince them that they need to be healed, and you want to do it immediately and so forth. But okay, that's anything else to say? Just that was my intro. I just wanted to see those categories. Just to remind, right? We have the major categories. How sick is the person? Is it like an immediate? Their entire body is going to die. They're going to lose a limb. Are they just like, but they sick that they can't go anywhere? Like they're lying down in bed, in a dark room. Or is it like, yeah, they're fine, they're not like they're in a little bit of discomfort, and we have the axes then when we get to a little bit of discomfort we have the axes of Deoraita violations, Derabanan violations. We'll see actually. So actually maybe I'll just say it here what are the axes of there's I think 3 different axes of Derabanan violations that might come up here.
Do you do it regular with a shinui?
Good. Okay, I wasn't even thinking about that. Your regular Shinui. Good.
Ipe masa.
Yeah, good. Does there actually like what doesn't have a masa? Give me an example. It's like
Dibor.
exactly Dibor Lenochri, right? You ask an Anju to do it might be different than you doing it with with a Shinui or doing it at all, or because there's no masa. You were just asking. Good. So there's Dibor, so masa, and then there's maybe 2 different categories of Derabanan violations.
Shvut.
Shvut, good.
Shvut.
Yes. I wasn't thinking, what was the other axis if it's not Shvut?
A gezerah? No.
Yeah. I think it's more like that the category of semach midioraita, right? Semach midioraita, right? Is it based upon a dioraita violation?
Something that comes from a malacha, shvut generally means it's not a malacha, but it's from the general idea of
Exactly.
rest.
Yeah, good. So, like, is it based on a malacha, even if it's derabanan? That might be stricter than something that's like, not at all. Okay. All right, I want to start with Yud Zayin. Rav Nachum reminded me this is maybe the most important in all of this, at least the way we were looking at it. And so I thought Yud Zayin would be a good place to start. And then we'll go back as we have time. So it's good to have teachers who remind you of these things, right? So, okay. Rav Nachum's here. He's being very quiet. So I don't know. All right. I'll read the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. I'll start with just the Shulchan Aruch actually, and there's a little piece of the Ramah in the beginning, and then we'll do the Ramah after. So okay, Cholesh nafal machmat chol yo lemishkav ve'ein bo sakana. So this is the case of the person who is sick. They have to lie down, right? They're not getting up, but there's no sakanat nevashot going on here. Okay. Even though sometimes it may feel like it. And the Haggad, this is the Ramah adds, right? He's got a concern that, he's going to be in a lot of pain. The whole body's going to get sick, right? This is the also a category that's the same thing as, even though he's not nafel the mishkav, he's similar. She'az afapi sheholech. Hold on, sorry, I got a small version here. Kenafal mishkav dame. Even though this person's still walking around, the person who's really concerned that it's going to and the concern is causing, you know, his whole body to be at stake, that person is as if they fall into to the bed. All right. So what are the things that we can do? We can ask a non-Jew to heal this person. So you can ask a non-Jew to heal them, but you cannot violate a deraita. Okay. Even if they're going to lose a limb, right? You can't violate a deraita. You can ask a non-Jew. Go to the non-Jewish doctor. Interesting set of questions about trusting non-Jewish doctors, but that's beyond our question here. Historically, I don't mean today. I mean historically. It's a major concern. But okay. All right. So what about a Jew to violate a derabanan with their themselves with their hands, right? Not just a dibur. So here's the four categories. Number one, yesh matirin, afilo ein bo sakanat ever. All right, the first one is that you're allowed to do it even if there isn't the person's not at risk of losing a limb, right? Just any case where you're chole and nofel mishkav, you can violate a derabanan. This, I believe, is the Rambam, one version of the Rambam. There's two different opinions in the Rambam. So, okay. Ulchalel alav Yisrael be'isur derabanan be'adayim. I read that one. Okay, that's opinion one. V'yesh yomrim she'im yesh bo sakanat ever osim v'im ein bo sakanat ever ein osim. All right, so axis number two, which is the run, is that you can violate a derabanan if there is a risk to limb. If there's not a risk to limb, you can't violate a derabanan. You can ask a non-Jew again, but you can't violate a derabanan yourself as a Jew. Okay. All right. V'yesh omrim she'im ein bo sakanat ever osim b'shinui, v'im yesh bo sakanat ever osim b'lo shinui. All right. There's opinion number three. This is the Ramban. Says that if there's no sakanat ever to a limb, then you can do it with a shinui. But if you don't, if there's no risk to a limb, it's me. I said that all wrong. If there's no risk to a limb, you do it with a shinui. If there is a risk to a limb, then you can do it without a shinui. Okay. All right. V'yeshomim, and this is the final opinion, but this is also from the Rambam, I believe. Afilu yesh bo sakanat ever, ein osin lo davar shehu nismach l'malcha d'oraita. Right. Even if they're going to lose a limb. So in all cases, what you can't do yourself as a Jew is anything that is based upon a malacha d'oraita, even if it itself is a derabanan. Okay. Okay. Udvarim she'ein bahem semach malacha osin afilo ein bo sakanat ever. And things that don't have a basis in a d'oraita, you can do them even no matter what, even if sakanat ever or not sakanat ever. Okay. Those are the four opinions there. And then the Shulchan Aruch weighs in. He says, "V'divrei asrash shlishit nir'in." Seems to me that the third opinion is correct. Now, the third opinion, I believe, seems to be, and most people seem to agree with this, which is the Ramban's opinion. So I'll just say that again, is that you can do it. So let's make sure I have it. Yeah. If there's no sakanat ever, you have to use a shinui. If there's sakanat ever, you don't need a shinui, and you can violate the Rabbanan. Okay, that's the Ramban's opinion. The Bach reads this whole thing a little bit differently. I believe the Taz doesn't agree with him, right? He says, I don't understand what my father-in-law was doing. So, okay. His father-in-law didn't understand what his son-in-law was doing a lot of the time, so it's a nice exchange. So, all right, any questions about that? This is I think it's very important, right? This is like a really, a good sense of I've seen this, right? Somebody breaks their arm, right, on Shabbos, breaks, but I'm a bad parent. This was a year ago, 2 years ago, Shavuot. My Gedalia was jumping off in the park behind us. He was jumping off the bleachers and he injured his arm. And we thought he was fine because he acted like he was fine. And so we didn't take him to a non-Jewish, to urgent care. And then the next day it was still swollen and it wasn't Shavuot anymore. We did take him to the doctor and it turned out it was fractured. But okay.
Did we do the Ramah?
We didn't do the Ramah yet at the end here. Yeah. So. The katan is an interesting question. So we'll get there.
I can't see the chat if we have things going on in the chat.
Oh, I haven't seen anything in there yet. So oh yeah, well we did. Max Buchtel talked about cough drops as an interesting case of is it refuah or not, right? Okay. So let's start out. Seif Katan Memvav. This is the on Yud Zayin when it said, I think this was after, yeah, right after the first Ramah, that you can you can say to a non-Jew, can you heal this person for me on Shabbos? Okay. Maybe Josie, you want to start us out? Memvav?
Sure, Armin וכולי. ודווקא כשצריך לרפוא בשבת עצמו, כשאין צריך לה בשבת, ימתין עד מוצאי שבת. אבל כשיש סכנה, אסור להמתין. And that's the pre-Megadim. So he's saying basically, if we're looking at basically it's if you can possibly wait until after Shabbat, you should, but if you can't, then you don't.
Exactly. So, okay. We saw this before, but the Mishnah Berurah is reminding us of this here. Okay. Now I will say we're not going to. Yeah, no, we're not yet. So let's do also Mem Tet in the Mishnah Berurah. This is that you're not allowed to violate a deraita even to save a limb. So maybe Josie, read that one too.
Avar. עיין לאל בסעיף ו' וסעיף ט' דיש איברים שנגיע לפיקוח נפש. והוא הדין כי יוצא בזה בשאר האיברים. אם הרופא אומר שאם לא ירפאו האיבר יוכל לבוא לפיקוח נפש, הרי הוא כשאר חולה שיש בו סכנה. So, B'kitzur, basically there are certain limbs for which, and presumably certain damages to limbs, that if you don't do it, it's actually pikuach nefesh, and you're going to end up there. Like if you take a big slice across your thigh.
Exactly. Yeah, nicely put, right? You know, especially with risk of infection and so forth. Like just because you're at risk of losing a limb, you may say, well, wait, actually, you also are at risk of losing your whole body in some cases. And
I mean, you could bleed out.
Exactly.
I mean, let's just put it
Oh
straight
yeah,
up.
it's a great point as well, right? So you know these are all cases where therefore you would then violate a deraita in those cases, and that's not just a sakanat aver, that's a sakanat guf at that point. So okay, but and let's look also at let's see Nun Bet in the Mishnah Berurah, which was no, okay. Now we're actually yeah. This is again. So this is the first opinion. So just a reminder here, and Rav Nachman reminded me of this, right? The Mishnah Berurah, we're about to get, the four opinions in the Shulchan Aruch about what to do. He is explaining these opinions. He's not necessarily paskening at this point. So let's be very careful to remind ourselves. So we're in opinion number 1 at this point. And this is the opinion that you're allowed to violate any derabanan beyadayim even if there's not a sakanat ever, if the person is nofel lemishkav. Okay. So Reuven, go ahead and read Nun Bet for us.
Okay. Eva. ועד לאל ברישא סעיף כעת, שהוא חולה שנפל למשכב או שמצטער הרבה וחלה מזה כל גופו. אבל אם בכל גופו אינו חולה כלל, רק שהוא חולה באחד מאיבריו, וגם באותו האיבר אין סכנה, לכולי עלמא לא שרי לחלל כי אם על ידי אינו יהודי, וגם דווקא בדבר שהוא משום שבות בעלמא. דאז על ידי אינו יהודי נעשה שבות דשבות, ושרי במקצת חולה. Ukedilael b'siman shin zayin seif hey.
Give us
okay. So this.
Go for it.
Oh, sorry.
I say you can summarize it too if you want. So
summarize too. Okay. So this is only the case if you are actually if you're sick such that you cannot walk around as you normally would, or you're just like very pained and the pain is throughout your entire body. But if it's just in that one limb, and in that one limb there is an actual danger of losing your life, then everyone agrees that you can. Well, when it says lo share lechalel ki im al yedei eno yehudi.
Yeah, remember he's talking about you said something slightly off there, right? It's that, and we're in a case where you're not going to lose a limb. Right. So we're talking about, in other words, this is referring back to the case if you're nofel mishkav, or that you're mita'er, and therefore it's going to be chole b'chol gufo.
Yeah.
and you're not going to lose the limb, right? In those cases, in other words, like I have major pain, major damage to a limb, but I'm not going to lose the limb, and I'm walking around, and I'm not so worried about it, then what can you do?
Then you can. Well, so that's what I was unclear about. You can do it yourself. You do not have to.
Oh no, I think it's
Reverse.
no. L'chuli amo lo share lechalel, right? Ki im al yidei inu yudi.
Right.
All you can do
You
is,
have to tell a non-Jew to do it.
and not just that, but a non-Jew to do what? It's just to ask him to do a shvut, right? But not ask them to.
Do a shvut, yes.
Yeah,
Because
right.
it's a shvut, which means it's permitted.
Exactly, right. This is right. We have a case of shvut to shvut, right? When two shvutim come into contact with each other, right? Shvut number one being asking the non-Jew, shvut number two being it's a shvut to begin with, right? That in particular cases of shvut to shvut, you're allowed to violate on Shabbos, right? So you can do it letzorach mitzvah, right? But here it's letzorach healing somebody, right? You're allowed to do that as well to heal the limb. Okay. But
Can I ask a question about that? Maybe I'm just not, maybe it's simpler than I think it is. I'm not grasping it, but can you explain the shvut to shvut here?
yeah, like they would, something well, okay. So for instance, well, it's an interesting question. Shema, lest you come to grind, whether that's the shoot or not. That may be a gezerah, which may be different. I don't know. I have to maybe Rav Nachum has an answer. But let's say for the moment that it is like that's a shvut, right? That taking a pill on Shabbos is a shvut, all right, and asking a non-Jew to do something that violates Shabbos is a shvut, right? It's a rabbinic,
Right.
but not all rabbinic things are shvuts. But therefore, it's shvut to shvut. You're like so, yeah,
Why
right.
is the pill shvut and not a tzemach from grinding?
I know that's the thing. That's why I'm wondering. I don't know if that's a good example.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Sure. But it's interesting. Some of the shvutim, the way like right, where's the major list of shvutim?
Beitza.
Yeah, in Beitza, right? Mishnah and Beitza, right? But there's a bunch of them like allowed to clap and to slap and to right,
Yes.
And the Tosfot on some of those says, well, we do some of these things today because it's really Shema Yetaken, right? Kli Shiur, and that sounds like it's a gezerah, So I don't know. It's a very fine line sometimes between shvut and gezerah, and I'm not always so clear on it. But yeah. I'll just say it that way. Maybe I need more EU, and I always, so whether or not I will say though also, right, he also might mean Gezerah here because I think, right, Amiral Nochri you could say is a Gezerah, right, because you don't want to like get too used to asking non-Jews to like do all your Shabbos stuff for you, right, and so in that case, that's not a Gezerah that has a Semach a malacha deraita, I would say, but nonetheless, it's a gezerah, and then you might actually also say Engels renal gezerah also might apply here too.
Right.
But, okay, that's it's a good question, and I will say maybe this is like a personal thing. There are times, and like the Mishnah Berurah, I think that the Shulchan Aruch, all of these, the Gemara are all pushing to this. There are times when you have to say to yourself, you know what? I think I just have to heal this person. And then Hashem and I are going to deal with it later, right? Did I do it right? And I think Hashem would probably more likely say to you, "Why didn't you jump to heal this person rather than why were you asking the questions?" Right? We saw this, right? Don't wait, don't hesitate. You jump to it, and after the fact, I think it does. Personally, I will just say, like, if I can be a rabbinic for a minute, when it comes to your own personal stuff, like you may be a little bit more machmir because I'm not in any danger. Okay, my head's bothering me, but I don't know if I really have to go lay down right now. Do I really have to, that kind of stuff. But maybe not. Maybe it's bad. It's also bad to show the kahal that you're being too strict about it also. So it's something to be really careful about. So okay. Let us move on to Sif Katan Nun Gimel. So we're in the second Dea, I believe, in this one.
Can I offer an example?
Oh yeah, please, Rav Nachum, please. Yes.
Yeah, maybe a shvut is amir la'akum, and then maybe you ask the guy to, let's say, put on some kind of antibiotic cream on on your wound, and your wound is not a sakanat aver, but you'd like to have this cream put on. So that might be a shvut to shvut. If assuming that putting the cream on is asur d'Rabbanan, let's say.
Yeah. So that might actually, the inoculation may be a good example too, right? Where it's like, assuming assuming it's an illness you're being inoculated for that's not going to kill you, and you need
Yeah,
to.
but why
Yeah.
do you say that inoculation if it's with a needle? That could be d'oraita, no?
You think it's deraita? I don't know that it's maybe it does. Maybe it rises to deraita level. So.
Maybe you draw blood. I think I was just talking about this with my chavruta, and he was saying that he thinks it's d'oraita.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know.
I'd also be wondering, like, an inoculation is almost always something that can wait until after Shabbat, because it does take time for your body to do it, and unless you are, it could take anywhere from 12 to 24 hours to take effect in any case. So it's very difficult to imagine a scenario where an inoculation would be an immediate. Now, that's opposed to the injection of a medicine. That's something else. But inoculation.
No, I know there's one case in particular. Inoculation is an immediate need, which is rabies. But that's the sakanat nefashot, right? You get bitten by
that's different. Now you're talking about
you get bitten by a rabid dog. That is or a bat.
But that's not inoculation. That's actual medicine.
No, that's inoculation because it takes the rabies a time to get through your system, and so you're actually being inoculated. It takes like a week or so, or depending on where you get bitten, and so you're actually being inoculated as soon as possible, so that your body gains resistance to it before it spreads to the rest of the body. So that's actually is an inoculation. So, okay, it's an.
But we're talking about doing refuah because of he's a chole, right?
Yes. As opposed to like we're talking about he's like
you're talking about inoculation. Are you all your rabies case? Maybe you could call it a chole, but it may be a regular case. You're not a chole at all.
Oh, you're right.
That's just preventative.
Yeah,
you're like bari. I don't think a bari can just elect to do an inoculation. I mean, you're saying it's pikuach nefesh. That's kind of a far pikuach nefesh, because you're saying that if I would get even if first of all I know the reason why I think I'm going to get corona, and if I do get it, I probably will survive. I don't know. It's a big question. I mean, you can die from anything, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
I think there has to be. I once delved into this a bit. There has to be some kind of threshold of what's called pikuach nefesh.
For sure. So.
And I'm not sure that I might get corona, and then just stay indoors and don't go out until after Shabbat, and then do the inoculation. I don't know.
Yeah. Ori, what do you have on that?
On the flip side is an inoculation refuah.
That it should even be asur. Healthy people get inoculations.
Yeah, it's like eating food. It's not medicine in the traditional sense of medicine, because it's preventative as opposed to like treating a sick person. So even the connection to grinding might be a bit weaker here.
Well, I think it's two things about that. We can all agree that there is a violation, whether Rabbanan or D'oraita, of sticking a needle in your body on Shabbos, right? That for sure there's a violation. I think no one would question that.
What malacha is that?
So it's a great question, right? It's probably chovel, right? It's a question, what malacha is chovel? Is it? I think one Tosfot thinks it's shchita. One thinks it's tzovea. But it's clearly not allowed. And whether or not it's a Rabbanan or D'oraita is another interesting question. But it would be an interesting question. There are certain inoculations that are inoculation. I believe actually means under the skin, but they're not actually inoculations. They don't go into like there's anti-flu things that you can, I think, take through your nose. Is that right? Did I make that right?
Yeah, there's also oral inoculations.
Oral as well. Yeah.
Globally, there's
prophylaxis.
Yeah. So those would be interesting.
There's flu vaccines that are literally a tablet or something.
Yeah. So it would be an interesting question too. Rav Nachum's question of like, do you have to be sick actually already for this? Can we live in a world where it's like it is just being in, and maybe even COVID's the wrong, like Black Plague, kind of, where like 60% of the people of Europe died, do we just assume we are all cholet to this? I don't know. Yeah, I do know, right, Rav Nachum, I think that, and maybe Taylor, there is language, I can't remember who it is, in Ashkenaz in the medieval period about like asking a non-Jew to put wood on the fire, right? Which is clearly a deraita, asking, right, the wood on the fire is deraita. You can ask a non-Jew, and the answer is, well, we are all choleh, right, to the cold.
Extreme cold.
That's a pretty lenient position, but maybe it makes sense also. And so I think Jacob Cass talks about this in his book, The Shabbos Glay, if I remember correctly. But yeah. All right, go
It
ahead.
it just seems like the context helps determine the level of pikuach nefesh. Like to Rav Nachum's point, like these socks are coming in a time where the plague is so obvious and so clear, and so many have died that they're not questioning, oh, what are the chances of me getting COVID or whatever it is, right? Like I've seen other famous writings about other famous plagues where they were very quick to say this is pikuach nefesh, but that was because they were looking at the mitzias of the plague. So
Yeah.
it's not a thing that you can easily generalize, I think. It's something that's very case based.
So I think that Rav Nachum's right in like, I mean, I usually think that. So, but it's no, I think that in terms of the need for a threshold, and look, I've definitely seen cases where it feels a little far-fetched to call certain things pikuach nefesh, right? It's like I don't really know that anyone's dying from this thing, and uh, so at some point we have to say like, okay, yeah, this is beyond that boundary. And I think this is what a little bit of this is dealing with here too in this seif in the Shulchan Aruch is like, okay, there are sicknesses, there are illnesses that are bad and they're debilitating. They're not, no one's dying from them, like, and like, how do we're not going to ignore them on Shabbos, right? If the person's falling, but we are going to, push aside certain, derabanans, not all, maybe, or maybe all, or maybe some cases all, but like, but nonetheless, we're going to do some healing, but we're going to do some so very carefully. So. Okay. With that, where did I want to go next? Oh yeah, yeah. On Nun Gimel in the Mishnah Berurah. And this is on the second opinion. That you can violate with your hands a derabanan if there's sakanat aver, but this is if there's not a sakanat aver, you cannot do it. So maybe or you want to read for us, Nun Gimel?
Yeah, I just gave Mamie a lollipop, so I've got a few minutes. After chole hakolel, so im ein bo, what is the second on ever?
Yeah, exactly.
After chole hakolel kol haguf, svir lehu da asur la'asot de Yisrael. So even if he's sick in the whole body, svir lehu da asur la'asot al yedei Yisrael. This opinion is still saying you can't use a Jewish person can't do it. Udaya zo ashniya. Afilu b'shinui asur la'asot ba'atzmo. And according to this second opinion, even in a shinui, you can't do by yourself. So Amir al here and shinui, I guess, are two different
Yeah, remember,
dimensions.
Amirab Lagoy is just Amirab versus to do something with the Shiur, you're still doing it biyadayim, right?
Im lo hechi di'ev shar la'asot aideinu Yehudi. Modu l'dea shlishit mutar aidei Yisrael b'shinui. So if not this, that you're not allowed to give it to a non-Jew to do.
I'm not allowed. If there is a case where there's no non-Jew to do it, what if you're stuck, right? If according to this dea, right, the second opinion, what if the person does have like is cholel, he's no fellow mishkav, right? And there's no non-Jew to help them.
Then they would agree with the third opinion that you could do it with a shinui.
Exactly. This was important to me because even though we poskin seemingly like the third opinion, this is like gives more weight to it even, right? It's like if you want to be a little bit stricter like the second opinion, even they agree with the third opinion that if there's no non-Jew around, you do it with the shinoi and you can if there's no sakanat aver, and you can help them. So but again, this is really the Mishnah Berurah like probably doesn't care, halacha about this opinion so much, right? He just cares to explain it. But it is also, I just like as a side note, I think it's you don't see this. You see a lot of Yeshomims in the Shulchan Aruch. Every once he'll say one seems like the Ikar or whatever. He's laying out four different opinions though. as if it's the Beit Yosef in the Shulchan Aruch almost. It's like pretty fascinating to me here. I don't know what to do with this. The fact that he writes like this here. Even though he said Nireli, Deash Shlishit, that's Far Shlishit rather. It's like it's unusual. I'm not an expert at Shulchan Aruch, but I can't recall right now off the top of my head a place where I've seen him do it to this extent before. So
It seems like refuah is a sensitive case that you want to know these opinions because in different, like in this example in the Mishnah Berurah, there's cases in which you could try to go like this opinion, and then if you don't have that circumstance, then you sort of fall down to the next Makil opinion.
exactly.
But having all of them in your arsenal gives you better judgment for diverse cases.
So, but yeah, no, I think you're right. And there are opinions, there are definitely times when we rely on non-dominant opinions, right? It's either I've seen it like the Aruch HaShulchan, he says if your community is doing something and you can't, it doesn't seem to follow halacha, but you can find another opinion that justifies it, then like you should do that. It's not everyone, by the way, Posek agrees with him on that case, but that's the way he talks about it. In particular, I remember him saying that about we'll do this next year, about he doesn't like the way his community is not checking for bugs in food, and he's trying to like justify why they're not doing that. So he makes that claim. So okay. I wanted to do that now. The maskana here, the bottom line in this whole thing is that right, the Shulchan Aruch says v'divrei hasfar hashishit nir'in. So the Mishnah Berurah is going to just remind us what is that thing, which we've talked about with the Ramban's opinion, and also because there's some machloket, I think, over which is the third opinion and how to count them here. So maybe Max, you want to read Nun Zayin in the Mishnah Berurah?
Sure. Hasvara hashlishis hainu shemutar lasos afilu kol hashvusim v'rak al yadei shinui. So that's the
Oh, yeah,
Ramban.
but don't stop there. Don't stop there.
Okay, all right. Rak al yadei shinui im hu choli kol haguf.
And
Ve'en sakanas aver.
exactly.
Okay, so you can do any shvus as long as it's by way of a shinui if the person is in this choli kol haguf category. And I guess even if there's no sakana of an aver, if you're choli kol haguf, you can use a shinui. V'im yesh bo sakanas aver ein sarich shinui klal, right? But if you're already in the category of you're worried about a limb, then the shinui doesn't even that's not even necessary. V'kach piresh hataz umagan Avraham v'chein kasav hagra shedea zo ikar shehidas rov haposkim. Right there, this is him sort of hinting at the fact that some people think the third opinion is the second understanding of the Rambam in the Beis Yosef, but the third one, according to basically everyone, is the Ramban.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this Mishnah Berurah, right, really, as you kind of said, it accomplishes two things. One, it just reminds you of what the opinion is. It's like a nice summary, and then also, it's like this is how we count to three, and it's that one in particular, and pretty much everyone agrees about that, and so that's how we ask it at the end of the day. So just remind us, right, at the end of the day, if you are nofel mishkav or nafal mishkav, if there's a sakanat aver, you do not need a shinui to violate a shvut. As a Yisrael, like if there is no sakanat aver, then you can you can violate the Rabbanan, but with a shinoi. So I don't know where this falls into all of this, and this is I know that Rav Ethan Tucker, I remember heard him say once when I don't know which one of their children was, Ariella was in labor. They went to the hospital, and in order to admit her to the hospital, he needed to. And this actually gets into also Dechuya versus Hutra, but he needed to sign a bunch of forms, and he decided to do it with his opposite hand, right? Because you just then it becomes a rabbinic violation. Obviously we do say that certain things, for women who are in labor, are definitely sakanat nefashot. But nonetheless, in that case, he used, he did it with a shinoi.
Is signing forms part of refuah or
It's a
no?
it's a great question. It's the truth is sometimes they won't let you admit people to the hospital if you don't sign the forms. So in some ways, yeah, I think it kind of is. And
If she had come in on an ambulance, they wouldn't be doing this.
it's very true, but then you'd have to convince them, right? It's like
If you're coming in on an ambulance, I mean, I
they just
speak from someone who rides on an ambulance. We're not asking people to sign forms. They don't sign forms until well after they've been triaged and dealt with in the emergency room.
also fair. Yes, that's it's a good point. So, um, but I for another time, my son was born Erev Yom Kippur. But so we did end up in the hospital on Yom Kippur, which was itself interesting and quite an experience. But there was no, I mean, obviously Rachel didn't have to fast. But in fact, I remember Rav Landis writing me that it was but but there was no for me personally, I wasn't, nothing, and they weren't really doing anything with her that was violating anything at that point. So it wasn't an issue. I don't remember them asking me to sign any forms that day. So I don't remember it even coming up as an issue. Okay. Let's do the Ramah there. Now we may just do Yud Zayin mainly today, which is fine. So the Ramah, he says, Mutar lomar le'eno Yehudi, lasot tavshil lekatan she'en bo malachol. She'en lo malachol. So you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to make a dish for a minor, for a child, right, who doesn't have anything to eat. Stam sorche katan kechola she'en bo sakana dami, right? Because the needs of a child there was a child is essentially like always in the state of being a chola she'en bo sakana. All right. V'chol she'asur lasot la'idei Yisrael, afilu la'idei hacholeh b'atzmo atzur. Okay, this is the second category. It says all the stuff that you can't do for a Jew on Shabbat, right? For a case like he's no fellow mishkav and so forth, can't violate a deraita, maybe you can't violate maybe some derabanans, or it depends on the case, right? Even the sick person themselves is not allowed to do this. Aval kasher selo ha'eno yudi mutar lacholeh l'sayo kitzat the Messiah in mamash. But when the non-Jew is doing it, you can do Messiah. You can be, we'll look at this in the Mishnah Berurah. You're allowed to help them out a little bit because being Messiah doesn't count as doing, it's not really a thing. So, okay. So we'll look at those three. I think there's three Mishnah Berurahs on this I wanted to look at, starting with Nun Chet. Nun Chet was, oh yeah. But okay. Oh yeah, this is an important thing. So like, okay, so let's say a non-Jew, you have a child who needs food on Shabbos, right? And you ask a non-Jew to cook it for them. A big thing about what your part of the process is. So let's look at Nun Chet, that it's mutar to have this is to ask a non-Jew to cook the food. Let's see, maybe Josie, you want to read that Nun Chet?
Sure, mutar. ואם אין התינוק רוצה לאכול כי אם על ידי אמו, מותר לאם להאכילו אפילו חלבו אינו יהודי ובישלו. So if the child is finicky and only eats is only fed by his or her mother, it's permitted for the mother to feed him, even chalavo eno yudi vishla, even if it's if it comes from the eno Yehudi.
I think it's like or it's like the non-Jew
The
milks the
non-Jew
cow.
milked the cow,
Yeah. Mhm.
or did something,
Yes.
or
Before you
cooked
read
it.
any further, right? What's the concern? What's the havamina that the mother or the father too, right? Would a parent wouldn't be allowed to bring the food to the child?
You might be carrying it outside somewhere,
Well, maybe not. Maybe
or
inside. Inside.
bishul. I mean, bishul is right there.
Well, they're not cooking it though, right? The non-Jew cooked it. The food is muksa.
Oh, because it's nolad.
Yeah, it didn't exist exactly, or it was milked. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, keep reading.
So right there, Alf Algav Matatelet Muktzeh. Ve'ayin bepri megadim demitzaded kitzat devai shinui
Mhm.
kata b'chay adam.
Stop there with the Pri Megadim. So, what does the Pri Megadim say?
It says the Pri Megadim is a little bit more specific and says you have to do this with a shinui. So if the
Yeah,
parents are doing it, they have to do it with a shinui.
exactly. Okay, but all right.
And the chay adam,
Mhm.
צריך להיזהר שלא ליתן המלאכה בעצמו לגדרה, דאחד נותן מים ואחד שופט את הגדרה, הראשון פטור אבל אסור. So if you're in the Chayyim Adam brings down the case where you are putting food into the pot, and you basically do it together. So one person adds food, one person adds water, and the first person that is, I guess, is this leading into like the Siua part? It's like so one person's adding water into it. They're, neither one is doing a completed action, but one of them is asur,
So yes,
patur aval asur.
just to clarify this case, right? He says, right, this is the case in the Gemara that you put water in a pot and another person puts the pot on the fire, right? That the first person is still, because we have the whole set of cases of like one person brings the branches, one person like you do all the different things that lead up to Bishul, who's actually violated the deraita. But putting the water in the pot, actually, that's going to be cooked, right, on the way to cooking is asur, even though if it's patur.
Aval patur.
So, what he's saying is, here's what you shouldn't do. You say to the non-Jew, hey, I need you to cook this food for the kid. Don't put the chicken in the pot and say, hey, I have this pot right here. Can you please turn the fire on? Right? Because now you're violating an Isur D'Rabbanan. You have to get them to also, put the food in the pot and put that on the fire.
Can you make my kid some chicken soup?
Exactly. As opposed to like, the chicken soup's on the stove. Can you please turn it on? Right. That's
well, I mean that's a question. Can you warm up already made things like that, which would be
yeah, it's a really interesting, we could say this, right? It seems to be that the way that Ashkenazim see heating liquids on Shabbos, there's bishul achar bishul, right? And that's a deraita violation. So, and some Sfardim too, right? I don't want to. They have a little bit different categories, unless you're Temani, where you follow the Rambam, where there is ein bishul achar bishul even for liquids. But
although we have given that there's you have yesh mi'al l'smoch, you could argue saying like in a case like this where your child is chola bit she'en bo sakana, you could even rely on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, just in practice.
Yeah, it was an interesting question. Maybe Rav Nachum has some insight to this. Like, if I have a Taimani neighbor, right, and I have pre-cooked chicken soup, and my child needs some chicken soup, right? They're on Shabbos. Could I have my Taimani neighbor heat it up for me? Because for them, it's not a violation.
But even if not, I'm saying just practically, like, could if somebody came to you and said, look, I really need to give my kid something that I have to warm up, and it's a soup or it's I have to warm up this liquid for my kid, or to beyond Yad Solet Bo,
yeah,
because maybe I have to bring it to a boil or something. I don't know. Can I rely upon this? Can I rely upon this opinion, even though it's not normative in my community? Because at least there is a community for which it is acceptable, and now I have this da'at yachid that is accepted somewhere.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good.
As a rabbinics question, not just as a.
Yeah, it's a deep question, right? It's like there's no Rav Nachum, please.
I would tend to say that you could. In other words, if you have a cholesh, a kolaguf, and you're saying you're not going to light a fire, you have a fire, you have a plata already lit, and you just want to heat up a liquid to give them that food that's already been cooked. Yes, since there are those that say that even by bishul, since they have the Rambam to rely on, you could do that. But should you do it with a shinui is the question. You see, because it is asur d'Rabbanan to put things onto the plata on Shabbat because it's like near a kimavashel.
Yeah.
So you'd have to put it on the plata with a.
Oh, Rav Nachum, you cut out your.
I say you'd have to put it on the plata with a shinui, because putting it on the plata itself is going to be asur d'Rabbanan, regardless, even if it's well.
We said putting on a plata isn't near a kabishol, right? Most poskim say it's not a plata.
It's not near a kabishol. Fine, but let's say okay. So a plata, you're right. A plata is particularly because nobody cooks on it.
Yeah.
But let's say a fire. If you had a fire burning, you'd have to put it on with a shinui.
Yeah. So, but that's interesting. That's all right. I like that. That's but so it sounds like Josie, Rav Nachum agrees with you that you could, since there's a shita to rely on, and it's a case of of a cholak kol aguf, you can cling to a shita about whether or not it's a Shabbat violation, right? Like a more lenient shita. But okay, let's do Nun Tet. But this is in the Mishnah Berurah, obviously. This is that the okay, the l'sayo, l'saya, that the sick person is allowed to assist the non-Jew who's doing the things to help heal them. So maybe Josie, read this one too.
Sure, נ"ט מותר לחולה, לאו דווקא חולה, והוא הדין אחר, אלא דאורחא דמילתא נקט. So this is, you don't actually have it's lav dafka chola, not just the sick person, but someone else. But this is sort of the way we describe these things.
It's the normal manner. In other words, right, Reuven's sick, and he asked the non-Jew to help them on Shabbat, and that's is cholel is nafal mishkav, and you ask the non-Jew to help them. Normally it's the who's to be and who would be assisting them. Maybe it would be Reuven normally, but if Josie's there, and Josie could also be the assistant for the non-Jew. So, but all right. So what is l'sayok? We haven't determined that, but. So let's see, Reuven, if you want to read Samech in the Mishnah Berurah.
Okay, לסייר קצת. היינו היכא שבלאו הכי נמי מתעבדה, אלא שמסייע מעט, כגון אינו יהודי שכוחל את העין, וישראל סוגר ופותח את העין שייכנס בו הכחול, אבל אם אינו יכול לעשות בלתי ישראל אסור. ומשמע דאפילו במלאכה דאורייתא מסייע אין בו ממש. Oh, interesting. Okay. So basically, if we're talking about a case where you're just helping out, your presence is not necessarily absolutely required. You're just helping the non-Jew, and we can infer from that even for malacha d'oraita, just being an assistant is permitted, which is I was not expecting.
Yeah,
because in bo mamash, if your presence isn't actually needed, then I guess you could say we're saying that your actions are legally inconsequential, even though they're like actually practically very helpful to the non-Jew.
Be like a little bit of a gopher, like the non-Jew says, "I'm gonna go crush something, for this sick person. Can you get me a bowl?" Right. All right.
Right, but you can't say, I don't know what would be something that would be mamish.
Yeah,
if you were helping,
like Messiah, and it would actually be so like you would be needed for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helping someone perform surgery or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
There's some physical act that requires more than one person's effort.
Yeah. So
one person can't maneuver it without.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it's just the two. I'm trying to think of a good example here. But you have to hold something open so the person can do something, or something like that. It's okay. How are we doing on time? We have some time. Let's go back a little bit. So I want to go back to Seif Bet in the Shulchan Aruch. I'm sure there's lots more to say about these cases, but Yud Zayin again is really the different categories of of someone who's chole, who's majorly chole, but it's not sakana, and the four different opinions as to how do we approach what you can and cannot do. Right? Everyone seems to agree that you can ask a non-Jew to heal them, and there's a question of how much can you as a Jew actively do. Can you violate a derabanan? Can you violate a derabanan with a shinui? Can you violate some derabanans that don't have samach malacha? And we saw that we possibly like the opinion of the Ramban, who says that for if there's a sakanat aver, you can violate Derabanan without a shinui, and if there isn't a sakanat aver, you can violate a Derabanan with a shinui. So okay. People feel fairly comfortable with, if like you're sitting in it to some extent at this point with that Yud Zayin. Okay. But let's do. I'll read bet in the Shulchan Aruch here. Shin Kavchet Sif bet. Mi sheyesh lo choli shel sakana. Someone who has a dangerous illness. Mitzvah lechalel av Shabbat. It is a mitzvah to violate Shabbat for them. V'hazariz hareju meshubach. Right, the person who is like the first to do it, the person who is the most enthusiastic, that person is praised. V'ashoel harez shofech damin. And someone who stops to ask the question about it. Right, is this really? I don't know. That person is spilling blood, right? That's a major issue. So let's do Sif Katan Dalid in the Shulchan Aruch. What did I want this one? Oh yeah. What kind of healing can you do? Ori, go ahead and read for us.
Sorry, it's a little noisy where I am. Which Sif?
Dalid in the Mishnah Berurah.
Down in the Mishnah Berurah.
It's a mitzvah to violate Shabbat for this person, to save this person.
I'm lost.
Oh, no, I know why I wanted Dalid. Sorry, I wanted it for a different reason. But yeah, Dalid in the Sif Katan Dalid in the Mishnah Berurah.
Dalid in the Mishnah Berurah. Did we move? I'm sorry.
It's Sif bet and
We're
the
at Sif
Shulchan
bet. We
Aruch.
moved to Sif bet.
Oh, we went back to bet. That makes a lot more sense. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the 4 shitot.
Fair enough. I can
design. I'm like taking detailed notes here of what the 3rd shita and the 4th shita are.
I wrote them up. I'm happy to
please do share.
They're my handwriting, but I'm happy to send them out. So yeah.
Great. Okay. Dalit. Got it. Bet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mitzvah. Perush la'asot lo refuah. V'atam mishum dichtiv v'chai bahem v'lo shemut bahem. Very familiar.
Good. And why is the Mishnah Berurah writing this, by the way? Why does he tell us what the source is?
You
could ask.
Was that Max?
You could ask, like, what's the mitzvah?
Well,
what
yes.
mitzvah are you doing?
But also remember, there's a major machloket of Tanaim, right? What's the basis for pikuach nefesh b'Shabbat? There's a whole bunch of shitot. We paskin right? This is. Remember who this is? I'm pretty sure I remember who it is.
Like Rav Papa. No.
It's an Amora. Sorry, it's not Moraim.
It's a Moraim. Yeah, it's a bunch of Amoraim that come up with increasingly stronger responses to the question, and the final one is a Chai B'Hem.
I believe this is Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, right? And then somebody says Nireli Kishmuel, right? In the Gemara there, it's so yeah. This is the opinion of Shmuel. V'chai B'Hem v'lo shamut B'Hem. That's the reason. There's other reasons, like they could keep other Shabbatot, right? There's all sorts of that shows up also in Yoma, but this is all in Yoma. This whole sugya is in Yoma, isn't it? If I remember correctly. So, okay, that's why I think the Mishnah Berurah is partially like it's good to know which mitzvah it is. I agree with you, Max, and also like we're paskening here, like which, and there is a difference. There is some nafkamina between the different shitots. So, but
is v'chai b'hem really counted as a mitzvah formally?
I mean, like if you look at the Minyan HaMitzvot in the Rambam, I believe so. I believe he has that. It's I'll double check, but I believe he does. Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's different counts, right? There's the Rambam, there's the Chinuch, there's Rav Sadia Gaon, I believe, had a count of anybody. Just at a very, it was like I'm gonna waste the time for a minute. Anybody on Shavuot and the Tikkun? Did anyone do the Azharot? People familiar with those? This is right, part of the tradition.
It's like a poem where it's like 600 and some verses of poem that you go through it.
Probably 613 in general. There's some split between the Aseh and Lo Taseh. There's different ones, but you go through all the mitzvot in a poem. There's different ones have been written through time. And that's
I just don't remember. I think some of them they might have combined two into a verse.
I think that's right too. Yeah, and sometimes I've tried to figure out what the order is, or they're just trying to get a rhyme scheme going. But it's but they're neat. If you ever get a chance, a lot of machzorim have them, and the tour actually says the tour is pre Tikkun Leil Shavuot. It says after Shachari, we have a tradition. We do the Asarot on Shavuot, so they're worth taking a look at. Um,
They're
so
popular in the Sephardic communities.
oh, so there you go. Okay. Just one more Vav in this is you shouldn't question whether or not to save this person. So maybe Ori, if you can, oh, you just read Max, if you can read Vashoel v'chule.
Sure. Perush osa ishu mischasid
Chased, probably, yeah.
mischasid v'yareh lechalel Shabbos b'chol kazeh im al yedei moreh. This is a person who is, really from and wants to make sure that they don't they get psak in order to do whatever
Hmm.
it is. Harehu shofech damim. That person is shofech damim. Shebe'od shehu olech lish'ol yichalesh hachole yoser ve'yuchal listaken v'harei kasu omer lo sa'amod begomer.
Yeah,
Right,
Lotamot
because while,
Adam Reacha, right? Lotamot
yeah.
Adam.
Right. So while you're wavering or running to get your posek, the person's getting worse.
Hmm.
And the pasuk says don't stand around. Okay. Uvi Yerushalmi Isa Hanishal Harezim Miguneh. So the Yerushalmi has slightly different lashon.
Wait. Read it very carefully. Who's Meguneh?
Harezeh Miguneh.
No, but who is it? The Nishal, not the
Oh, the
show,
Nishal.
right? Who's the Nishal?
The
The
posek.
posek.
Yeah, right. The posek. If you are getting asked questions, can I violate Shabbos to heal this person? You are yeah, right. There's a strong statement here from the Yerushalmi that's quoted by the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, keep going. Why?
Yeah. פירוש משום פירוש שהתלמיד חכם במקומו היה לו לדרוש בפרקה לכל, כדי שידעו כל העם ולא יצטרכו לשאלו. Right, you should be giving drashos about this all the time so that people know not to come ask you. You should
Exactly.
be proactive about it.
By the way, this is I don't want to like disparage that you this megunah. This like it's an instinct that people have when you're fully committed to a system of like, well, really, do I have to like I'm scared to violate Shabbos, like and they're like, no, you need to get out there and you need to be giving a drasha all the time, right? To tell people don't stop to ask, heal, so okay. Finish us up finish up for us, Max.
All right. ואם החולה בעצמו מסיירה שיעברו עליו את השבס, כופין עושו. ומדברים על ליבו שהוא חסידus של שטוס. If the sick person themselves are worried because they think they're not worthy, or it's not really that bad, don't worry, it's not that much blood. You really have to. It's interesting to say like medabrim al libo. I don't know. I don't think of speaking to the heart as saying, you're being a fool. But
Yeah, I think a little bit here there is well, two things. One, Minna Bo is like persuade the person, right? Use your
yeah,
words to persuade them. You don't want to have to hold them down if you don't have to, or if you have to, you have to, but you don't want to. But also is I think telling somebody this is the midat what was the Hasidut shel shtut. On one hand, it does sound insulting, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily. It's like telling someone like, yeah, yeah, I understand you're trying to be pious. That's great, but this is beyond, right? Is can also be kind of really comforting to somebody. I think not always, but and obviously you have to know the person and that, of like, oh, okay, so this like person, sees what I'm trying to do that I want to serve Hashem, but they're reminding me that this is not actually serving Hashem. Like the instinct is right, the action is wrong, kind of thing. And
It's just a flesh wound.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. For those who know, is that Search for the Holy Grail? That's a Search for the
Yes, Holy Grail.
Holy Grail. But all right. I think
That's
so.
actually a great example of like Sakanat Ever, that whole scene with like the All the limbs coming off.
Great. Well, we should show that next time
Yeah.
before we teach this. All right, I didn't get to do Dechuya Hutra, which I think is a fascinating topic in itself, but hopefully this is helpful in like the bottom line halacha of what do we do, with someone that's, God forbid, sick on Shabbos, that it not happen and we all be healthy. So, yeshikoch, everybody.
Shkoyach, thank you so much.
Shabbos. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
Shabbos. Good Shabbos, everyone.